They call me beautiful when I kill. The crowd's hunger presses against my skin like a lover's touch. Eager, invasive, drawing sustenance from the arterial spray painting the arena's black glass floor. I am Xelthara of the Bleeding Serpent cult, and I remember when I still believed there was glory in the blade, before I understood that every perfect cut, every elegant dismemberment, every scream I orchestrate is just another coin paid to keep she who thirsts from claiming the shredded remnants of my soul. The thirst gnaws, always. It will gnaw until I die, and then she will finally have me. So I dance, I kill, I feed the screaming darkness that is my city, my culture, my prison. And in those perfect moments when my blade finds that precise angle between ribs and lung, when my opponent's eyes widen with the terrible knowledge of their death, when the drugs sing through my blood and the crowd's ecstasy washes over me like warm rain, in those moments, I almost forget that I am damned. Tonight's performance takes place in the Crucibael, the grand arena of High Commorragh, where the impossible architecture rises in tiers of obsidian and bone. Stolen suns, the Ilmaya, cast their ruddy, dying light across the killing floor, and the air tastes of copper and ozone. Above me, suspended in anti-gravitic viewing craft adorned with flayed skin and precious metals, the aristocracy of the Dark City watches with eyes that have witnessed millennia of atrocity. They are beautiful and terrible, my people, dressed in armor that flows like liquid midnight, their faces sharp as knives and twice as cruel. My opponent staggers to her feet across the arena floor. She is Xelthara the Crimson, a veteran of the rival cult of the Red Grief, and she has survived 300 arena performances. Her Hydra gauntlets, triple-bladed weapons that extend from each forearm, are slick with the blood of the orc gladiator we both dispatched in the first act. The crowd demanded collaboration. Now they demand betrayal. The performance demands it. I shift my weight, feeling the combat drugs coursing through my veins, a cocktail of stimulants, painkillers, and euphoric enhancers mixed by our cult's Haemonculi to precise specifications. My heart beats 4 times faster than it should. Colors sharpen until the world bleeds into hyper-vivid clarity. Time dilates. Each raindrop of blood suspended in the air between us becomes a crimson jewel hanging in space. Xelthara moves first. She's fast, blindingly fast, her form a blur of chrome and crimson as she closes the distance. But the drugs make me faster. I pivot on my left heel, feeling the barbed floor bite into my boot as her gauntlets whistle past my throat, missing by millimeters. The crowd gasps, not from fear, from pleasure. They feed on our precision, on the technical perfection of our near-death dance. My shard net flicks out, a weighted net of monofilament wire so sharp it can slice through ceramite. It wraps around her left gauntlet, and I yank. The wire bites deep, severing 3 of her blades at the root. She doesn't scream. Screaming is for prey. Instead, she laughs, a sound like breaking glass, and spins into my guard, her remaining blade seeking my exposed flank. I take the hit. Her blade punches through the gap in my armor just below my ribs, a cold line of agony that the drugs immediately transmute into something else, something dangerously close to ecstasy. The crowd roars, not in sympathy, in hunger. Their psychic feeding intensifies, invisible mouths drinking deep from the well of my pain, and I feel them leeching sustenance from my suffering, even as I draw my razor flails across her exposed throat. The flails are surgical instruments disguised as weapons, each one a gossamer-thin chain terminating in monomolecular hooks. They part flesh like water, and Xelthara's blood fountains across my face, hot and metallic and intoxicating. She stumbles back, hands clutching her throat, eyes wide with the understanding that she is lost. The crowd's hunger peaks, a psychic crescendo that threatens to overwhelm me, and then the thirst recedes. Just for a moment. Just for this one beautiful, terrible moment, the eternal gnawing hunger that has defined every second of my existence since I emerged from the vat retreats. The soul stuff I've harvested through violence, filtered through the crowd's feeding, refined by their ancient appetites, flows into me. It doesn't fill the void. Nothing can fill the void. But it delays the inevitable by one more day. Xelthara falls. I stand over her corpse, arms raised, blades dripping, and the crowd's approval washes over me like a toxic benediction. In the viewing craft above, archons and succubi nod their approval. I have performed well. I have fed them. I have earned my survival, and tomorrow I will do it again. I remember the vat, or rather, I remember remembering it. Because my first true memory is not of birth, but of awakening. A sudden, violent consciousness in a world that had already decided what I would become. The Haemonculi call us half-born, grown in their breeding walls from genetic templates refined over 10,000 years of selective cruelty. We emerge fully formed, adult bodies with child minds, naked and screaming in the crimson twilight of Commorragh's lowest depths. They separated us immediately, 200 wet, confused things blinking in the dim light of the spawning chamber. Those who showed weakness were culled within the hour. I watched a girl, no different from myself, stumble, and the homunculus overseeing our batch simply pointed. His rack servants fell upon her with their surgical implements, and her screams provided the first lesson. In Commorragh, there is no mercy, only utility. Those who cannot perform are raw material for those who can. The survivors were claimed by the bleeding serpent cult within the day. Our succubus, Lady Vyx'rathis, who had ruled the cult for 4,000 years, examined us with eyes like chips of black ice. She walked down our line, silent, judging. When she reached me, she tilted my chin up with one razor-sharp fingernail. "Fast twitch muscle development is excellent," she murmured, speaking to her hecatrix rather than to me. "Neural plasticity index within acceptable parameters. Aggression markers, adequate. This one may survive training." May survive. Training began that night. They drove us into the practice chambers, vast spaces where the walls themselves were lined with blades, where gravity shifted without warning, where the floor could open beneath your feet to drop you into pits filled with things that had once been people. We were given weapons, crude by witch standards but still lethally sharp, and told to fight. Not each other, not yet. First, we fought captured slaves, humans from the Imperium, greenskins taken on raids, Tau warriors stripped of their technology. They were already broken, most of them, dulled by days or weeks of torture and deprivation. Killing them should have been easy. It was not easy. The first one they gave me was human, a soldier, judging by the scars that crossed his body like a map of violence. They had already taken his eyes, but he could still hear, still fight by sound alone. They sealed us in a chamber together, 10 meters by 10 meters, nowhere to run. His hands were unbound. Mine held a single curved knife. He lunged at the sound of my breathing, and I moved on instinct. Instinct bred into my genetic template, instinct written in my artificial DNA. The knife found his throat. Not a clean kill. A messy, desperate slash that opened his jugular and sent him crashing to the ground, hands clutching at the wound, blood pumping between his fingers in rhythmic spurts. I stood there, knife dripping, and watched him die. It took almost a minute. He made sounds, wet, gurgling sounds, and his legs kicked weakly against the blood-slick floor. I remember thinking that it seemed inefficient, that there had to be a better way to sever an artery. That next time, I would angle the blade differently. I don't remember feeling horror. Perhaps the Haemonculi had already bred that out of us. Or perhaps it simply hadn't occurred to me yet that the thing dying at my feet had been a person. Someone with memories, with a life before Commorragh, with people who would mourn his absence. In that moment, he was just a problem to be solved, an obstacle that my blade had removed. The chamber door opened. My Hecatrix, a scarred veteran named Xelthara, whose every movement was liquid grace, nodded once. "Acceptable," she said, "but next time strike upward beneath the jaw, sever the carotid at its root. Death in 3 seconds, not 60. Efficiency is elegance." She was teaching me not how to kill. Any fool can kill. She was teaching me how to kill beautifully. We killed every night for 6 months. Humans, orcs, Eldar exiles, even a Tau fire warrior who fought with desperate mathematical precision until I learned to read his combat algorithms and exploit them. Each death refined our technique. Each scream added another note to the symphony we were learning to conduct. The Hecatari taught us anatomy, where to cut to paralyze, where to cut to bleed, where to cut to inflict maximum agony without risking immediate death. They taught us timing, positioning, the art of reading an opponent's center of balance. They taught us how to make death a performance. And through it all, we felt the thirst. At first I didn't understand what it was. Just a gnawing sensation, an emptiness that never filled no matter how much I ate or drank. The veteran Wyches laughed at our confusion. They knew. They had always known. After our first month of training, Lady Vyx'rathis assembled the survivors, only 73 of the original 200, and explained. "You feel it now," she said, her voice carrying the weight of 4 millennia. "The hunger. She who thirsts feeds upon our kind, draining our souls drop by drop from the moment we are born until the moment we die. This is the price of sensation, of feeling, of being Drukhari. The weaker races, humans, orcs, their ilk, they feel so little. They live in a world of muted grays. We experience existence in all its terrible brilliance, every nerve singing with input. But this gift comes with a curse." She gestured to the practice chambers, to the corpses being dragged away by rack servants. "Violence feeds us. Pain, inflicted, witnessed, orchestrated, provides sustenance that temporarily sates her hunger. Every death you cause, every scream you elicit, buys you another day of existence. This is why we fight in the arenas. This is why the spectacles must never cease. We are performers in a play that has no final act, only an eternal intermission that ends the moment we stop killing." One of my batchmates, a girl named Xelthara, whose reflexes were even faster than mine, raised her hand. "What happens if we refuse?" Lady Vyx'rathis smiled. It was not a kind smile. "Then the thirst consumes you, your soul withers, your body follows. Death comes slowly, painfully, and when it finally arrives, she is waiting. You will spend eternity being devoured by the thing your ancestors' depravity birthed. There is no escape. There is no redemption. There is only the choice between becoming a monster or becoming her plaything." Xelthara lowered her hand. She understood. We all understood. The choice had already been made for us, written into our genetic code by Haemonculi, who had long ago forgotten the meaning of compassion. We could kill, or we could die. Those were our only options. So we chose to kill. And with each death, it became a little easier. My first arena performance came 6 months after my awakening. By then, only 47 of my batch remained. The rest had fallen to training accidents, rival witches, or simple inadequacy. Commorragh has no patience for the mediocre. They prepared us in the cult's spire, a tower of flowing black stone that rose like a talon above High Commorragh. The preparation chamber was all angles and edges, mirrors everywhere reflecting our forms in infinite recursion. Haemonculus servants attended to our armor, fitting the segmented plates to our bodies with a precision that spoke of long practice. The armor was lighter than air, stronger than ceramite, and marked with the bleeding serpent's sigil, a crimson viper consuming its own tail. Then came the drugs. The cult's Haemonculus, a creature so modified that his original form was barely recognizable, administered the cocktail personally. He moved between us with surgical precision. injecting each witch with a formula tailored to her specific physiology. When he reached me, he paused, examining a data slate that displayed my neural architecture in shifting green light. "Accelerated metabolism," he murmured in a voice like grinding metal. "Enhanced pain threshold. Standard mixture would be insufficient. Adjusting compound 7%. This will hurt." It did hurt. The injection site in my neck burned like molten metal, and then the drugs hit my bloodstream like a tidal wave. My vision sharpened until I could see individual dust motes suspended in the air. My heart began hammering, 4 beats per second, maybe 5. Time dilated, sound crystallized. I could hear my batchmates' heartbeats, could smell the particular cocktail of hormones and fear pheromones each one was producing. And beneath it all, the thirst gnawed. Xelthara, our Hecatrix, addressed us one final time before we descended to the arena. "Tonight, you perform before the aristocracy of High Commorragh. Archons, succubi, Haemonculi, beings who have witnessed 10,000 years of atrocity. You will not impress them with mere violence. Violence is cheap in the Dark City. You must give them art. You must give them a spectacle so perfect, so technically flawless, that they remember your name. If you succeed, you earn your place in the cult. If you fail..." She didn't need to finish. We knew what failure meant. The arena was smaller than the Crucibael. This was merely Moade's Stair, a training ground where new witches proved themselves. But to me, emerging from the preparation tunnels into the ruddy twilight of the killing floor, it seemed vast beyond measure. The crowd filled viewing stands that spiraled upward in impossible geometries. Thousands of Drukhari watching with ancient, hungry eyes. Their psychic pressure was immediate and overwhelming, a weight that pressed against my mind, eager to feed on whatever violence I could provide. Our opponents emerged from the opposite tunnel, 6 Hellions, gangers from the middle darkness, riding their skyboards in defiant loops above the arena floor. They were young by Drukhari standards, probably no more than a century old, and they had made the mistake of disrespecting a Kabbalite Archon. This was their punishment. This was our test. The performance began without ceremony. One moment we stood ready, weapons gleaming in the blood-red light. The next, the Hellions dove. I moved on instinct, instinct bred into me, instinct refined through 6 months of brutal training. My shardnet uncoiled like a living thing, the monofilament wire singing through the air. It caught one Hellion skyboard, sheared through the anti-gravitic generator, and sent him tumbling to the ground in a spray of sparks. He hit hard, armor cracking, and I was on him before he could recover. My blade found the gap between his helmet and gorget, a precision strike, exactly as Xelthara had taught me. Blood fountained, and the crowd's hunger spiked. I felt them feeding, felt the psychic suction as they drew sustenance from his death. And in that moment, for the first time, I understood what Lady Vyx'rathis had meant. The thirst receded. Not much. Just a fraction. But that gnawing emptiness that had defined my entire existence pulled back slightly, sated for the moment by the filtered soul stuff flowing through the crowd's feeding. It was ecstasy and relief and horror all at once. The understanding that I would spend the rest of my existence chasing this feeling, inflicting death after death to earn these brief moments of respite. Around me, my batchmates were performing their own kills. Xelthara danced between 2 Hellions, her blades a silver blur, every movement economical and lethal. Another witch, I never learned her name, took a hellglaive to the chest and went down hard, blood pooling beneath her. The crowd's hunger intensified at her death, and I realized with cold certainty that they didn't care which of us died. They only cared that someone did. The performance lasted 7 minutes. When it ended, 4 Hellions lay dead, and 2 had fled back into their tunnels. Of my batchmates, 3 had fallen. The survivors stood in the center of the arena, blood-soaked and triumphant, while the crowd's approval washed over us like toxic rain. Lady Vyx'rathis herself descended from her viewing platform, moving with the fluid grace of something not entirely bound by physics. She walked among us, examining our work, and when she reached me, she smiled. "Clean kill," she said. "Efficient, elegant. You have earned your place, Xelthara of the Bleeding Serpent. Welcome to the endless performance." I should have felt pride. Instead, I felt only a profound and terrible understanding. This was my life now. This was all my life would ever be. An eternal cycle of violence and feeding, killing and surviving, dancing for a crowd that would never be satisfied until I finally fell and became just another corpse on the arena floor. The thirst gnawed. It would always gnaw, and I would always feed it. Years passed. Or perhaps decades. Time moves strangely in Commorragh, where the eternal twilight permits no natural rhythm of days and nights. I performed in the arenas twice per week, sometimes more when demand was high. Between performances, I trained. The cult's practice chambers became my world, a realm of razor-sharp education where every mistake drew blood and every hesitation could mean death. I learned the weapons of our art, shard nets and razor flails, hydra gauntlets and impaler rifles, power swords and agonizers. I learned to read an opponent's stance, their breathing, the minute shifts in weight that telegraphed their next move. I learned anatomy in grotesque detail, not just where to strike, but how to strike. The precise angle and depth required to sever a spinal cord or collapse a lung, or open an artery while keeping the victim alive and screaming. Most importantly, I learned to manage the thirst. It was always there, a constant background radiation of hunger that colored every moment of existence. Between arena performances, it would gradually intensify, a gnawing emptiness in my chest, a hollowness that no amount of food or water could fill. Sleep became difficult. Food tasted like ash. Everything that should have provided pleasure, the touch of silk against my skin, the architectural beauty of Commorragh's impossible spires, even the post-battle euphoria of the combat drugs, all of it became muted, filtered through the lens of she who thirsts constant feeding. But in the arena, when the killing began, the thirst would recede. The crowd's feeding provided a circuit, their ancient souls drawing sustenance from the violence I inflicted, and some fraction of that harvested essence flowing back to me, just enough to keep the void at bay. It was parasitic and symbiotic simultaneously. They needed me to kill, I needed them to feed. We were locked in a mutual dependency that had sustained Commorragh for 10,000 years. And with each performance, with each death, I felt myself changing. The first time I caught myself enjoying a kill, truly enjoying it, savoring the precise moment when the light left someone's eyes, I was fighting a captured Space Marine scout. He was young, barely a century old, his power armor stripped away to level the field. He fought well, fought bravely, but courage means nothing in Commorragh. Skill is all that matters. Style is everything. I broke him slowly, methodically, each cut designed to maximize pain while prolonging consciousness. The crowd fed greedily, and I fed from their feeding, and in that feedback loop of violence and sustenance, I realized I was smiling. Not because the performance demanded it, because I wanted to. The realization should have horrified me. Perhaps it did in some deeply buried part of my psyche that still remembered being freshly emerged from the vat, confused and uncertain. But that part was growing smaller with each performance, worn away like stone beneath a river of blood. I was becoming what the cult needed me to be. A perfect instrument of orchestrated violence. An artist whose medium was death. A performer who could make suffering into spectacle. My reputation grew. I took the name Xelthara the Swift, earned through a performance where I killed 11 opponents without taking a single wound. Kabbalite archons began requesting me specifically for their sponsored events. The Bleeding Serpent cult's standing rose in the complex political hierarchy of Commorragh, and Lady Vyx'rathis smiled her terrible smile whenever she saw me. But success brought its own complications. Rival Wyches from other cults began to see me as a threat. One, a veteran named Cyrician of the Cult of Strife, challenged me to a death match in the Crucibael. The challenge was political. Her cult wanted to diminish the Bleeding Serpent's influence, and my death would serve that purpose. I accepted. I had no choice. To refuse would be to show weakness, and weakness in Commorragh is death by another name. The night before the match, Xelthara, who had become something like a mentor, though Drukhari don't really have such relationships, found me in the practice chambers. I was running blade drills, thousands of repetitions, muscle memory being written into my cells through pure repetition. Cyrician is 200 years old, Xelthara said without preamble. She has survived 600 performances. She knows tricks you haven't encountered yet. She will try to humiliate you before she kills you. That's her style. Long, elaborate torture deaths that make the crowd ecstatic. I paused mid-strike, blade frozen in the air. How do I beat her? Xelthara's scarred face twisted into something that might have been a smile. You don't beat her. You're too young, too inexperienced. She should kill you easily. A pause. But she's arrogant. She will play with you first, show off for the crowd. If you can exploit that arrogance, if you can make her believe you're already beaten and then strike in that moment of satisfaction, you might survive. It's a slim chance, but it's the only one you have. She was teaching me something beyond blade work. She was teaching me how to be Drukhari, how to lie with your body language, how to make weakness look like defeat, how to strike from a position of apparent submission. The match took place the following night in the Crucibael, before the largest crowd I had ever performed for. Cyrician entered from the opposite tunnel, her armor covered in trophies from past kills, a space marine's helmet, an orc's tusks, what looked like an Eldar Farseer's spirit stone. She moved with the confidence of centuries, and when her eyes met mine across the arena floor, I saw only contempt. The performance began. She was fast, faster than anyone I had fought before. Her Hydra gauntlets were a silver blur, each blade seeking my throat, my eyes, the gaps in my armor. I retreated, giving ground, letting her drive me backward across the killing floor. The crowd sensed my fear, or what they believed was fear, and their hunger intensified. Cyrician laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Is this the best the Bleeding Serpent can offer?" she called out, playing to the crowd. A child who trembles at the first cut. She struck then, a vicious slash that opened my left shoulder. Blood ran hot down my arm. The wound was painful but not crippling. She had calculated it perfectly, designed to maim without immediately ending the fight. She wanted to take her time. She wanted to make an example of me. I stumbled, went to one knee, my shard net falling from nerveless fingers. Cyrician approached slowly, savoring her victory. The crowd's anticipation was a physical pressure, thousands of ancient beings leaning forward in their viewing craft, eager to witness my elaborate destruction. She raised her gauntlets for the killing blow, and I struck. My razor flails had never left my other hand. I had held them low, kept them out of sight, waiting for this exact moment, the instant when victory seemed certain, and her guard dropped by the barest fraction. The flails lashed out, gossamer chains singing through the air, and the monomolecular hooks caught her beneath the chin, punching through the soft tissue and into her brain. She died instantly. No spectacular finale, no elaborate suffering. Just a clean, efficient kill that violated everything the crowd had been anticipating. For a moment, there was only silence. The crowd didn't know how to react. I had denied them their expected spectacle. I had killed without artistry, without style. And then someone began to laugh. A single voice, ancient and amused. Others joined in. Within seconds, the entire arena was filled with cruel laughter. Not at me, but at Cyrician, at her arrogance, at the cosmic joke of a 200-year veteran being killed by a barely trained whelp. The crowd's hunger, denied its expected feast, found sustenance in humiliation instead. They fed on Carisian's posthumous shame, on the cult of strife's diminishment, on the delicious irony of the situation. And through their feeding, I felt the thirst recede. I had learned another lesson. In Commorragh, survival matters more than style. Win however you can. Feed the crowd's hunger in whatever way they'll accept. The performance is everything, but the only performance that matters is the one that keeps you alive. Lady Vyx'rathis descended to the arena floor, her ancient eyes gleaming with something that might have been approval. "Well done," she said quietly, her voice audible only to me beneath the crowd's continuing laughter. "You are learning, not just how to kill, but how to survive. That is the more important skill." She paused, examining me with those terrible eyes. "The thirst grows stronger with each passing year. Eventually, arena performances will not be enough. You will need to raid in Realspace, harvest souls directly, immerse yourself in suffering so profound that she temporarily releases her grip. This is the path of all witches who survive long enough. The performances are just the beginning." I looked down at Carisian's corpse, at the 200 years of accumulated experience, now reduced to meat and metal. "How long can someone survive like this?" I asked. Lady Vyx'rathis smiled her terrible smile. "I am 4,000 years old," she said, "and I'm nowhere near the oldest. If you are skilled, lucky, and ruthless, you can survive for a very long time indeed. The question is not how long you can survive. The question is whether survival at this price is worth calling life." She walked away, leaving me alone on the killing floor with Carisian's corpse and my increasingly difficult questions. The raid came without warning, as all good raids do. I had been with the cult for perhaps 3 decades by then, though time's passage in Commorragh remained uncertain. I had performed in hundreds of arena spectacles, killed thousands of opponents, and felt the thirst's grip tighten with each passing year. Lady Vyx'rathis was right. The arena performances provided sustenance, but it was no longer enough. Between spectacles, the gnawing hunger had begun to manifest physically. I lost weight despite eating. Sleep became impossible. Everything tasted of ash and copper, and I needed more. The Bleeding Serpent cult maintained contracts with various cabals, mercenary agreements where we would accompany their raiders into Realspace and provide close combat expertise in exchange for a share of captured slaves and harvested suffering. When Xelthara informed me I had been selected for the next raid, I felt something that might have been relief, or perhaps hunger. By that point, the two had become difficult to distinguish. The target was an imperial hive city on some forgettable world in the Segmentum Obscurus. I never learned its name. Drukhari raiders don't care about such details. What mattered was that intelligence indicated a population of several million humans packed into kilometers of vertical habitation, and the planetary defense forces had been recently deployed off-world. The city would be poorly defended. The harvest would be rich. 20 of us made the journey through the webway, witches from the Bleeding Serpent, supported by Kabbalite warriors and a handful of incubi from the patron cabal. The webway passage was brief but disorienting, traveling through spaces that existed between dimensions, where geometry became suggestion rather than law. When we emerged, it was into the harsh light of Realspace, into air that tasted wrong after breathing Commorragh's eternal twilight. The hive city sprawled below us, an ugly thing of ferocrete and desperation rising like a cancer from the planet's diseased skin. Our raiders, open-topped grav skimmers crewed by Kabbalite warriors, descended in silence, weapon systems primed. The plan was simple: strike fast, harvest what we could, retreat before organized resistance materialized. A textbook reaving. We hid at the shift change in one of the manufactorums, thousands of humans packed into narrow corridors, tired from their work, vulnerable. The raiders swept in low, disintegrator cannons turning the first responders into molecular vapor. Then we dismounted, and the real work began. Killing in Realspace was different from killing in the arena. There was no crowd to feed from, no circuit of psychic sustenance flowing back to ease the thirst. Instead, I had to harvest directly, opening souls with my blades and drinking deep from the raw suffering before it dissipated into the warp. It was crude, messy, and infinitely more satisfying than any arena performance. The humans tried to fight. They had stub guns, makeshift weapons, desperation. It made no difference. We moved through them like reapers through wheat, each kill calculated for maximum terror. I learned that day that fear multiplies suffering. A terrified victim provides more sustenance than one who dies quickly. So we took our time. We let them see what was coming. We made sure they understood their helplessness before the blades fell. I killed a man who reminded me of the first slave I had executed during training. Same build, same scarred hands, same desperate courage. He fought with a length of industrial pipe, swinging it like a club, and I could have ended him instantly. Instead, I took my time, bleeding him slowly, harvesting his fear and pain and mounting desperation. By the time I finally opened his throat, the thirst had receded more than it had in years. It felt glorious. It felt like coming home. And in that moment of savage joy, I realized what I had become. We took 100 slaves back through the webway, the strongest, the most attractive, the ones who would fetch the highest prices in Commorragh's flesh markets or provide the best entertainment in the arenas. The rest we left dead or dying. The manufactorum looked like an abattoir by the time we departed, blood coating the walls, corpses stacked in corners. Behind us, sirens began to wail as the city's defense forces finally responded. But by then we were gone. Back in Commorragh, the slaves were processed and distributed. The cult's share went to the arena pits, where they would be trained and eventually fed to other witches as I had once been fed captured enemies. The cycle perpetuated itself, an Ouroboros of violence consuming its own tail. That night, I found myself unable to sleep. Not from the thirst that had been sated for perhaps the first time since my emergence from the vat, but from the memory of the man with the pipe, the way his eyes had looked when he finally understood that courage meant nothing against the inevitable. I had enjoyed his death, not because the performance demanded it, not because survival required it. I had enjoyed it because some part of me, some growing, terrible part, had learned to find pleasure in suffering itself. Xelthara found me in the practice chambers, running blade drills in the darkness. She had survived alongside me, had become one of the cult's rising stars, and in our shared damnation, we had developed something that might have been friendship if Drukhari were capable of such bonds. "The first Realspace kill is always the hardest," she said, sitting beside me. "Not because of what you do to them, because of what it does to you." "I'm becoming a monster," I said. She laughed, not cruelly, but with a weariness that spoke of hard-won understanding. "We are already monsters. We were made to be monsters. The Haemonculi who grew us in their vats designed us for this purpose. Lady Vyx'rathis chose us because we had the capacity to become what the cult needed. Everything about our existence, our enhanced reflexes, our capacity for violence, even the particular way our souls resonate with the thirst, it was all carefully engineered. We are weapons that happen to look like people." "Then what are we supposed to do?" I asked. Xelthara stood, moving to the observation window that looked out over the impossible geometry of Commorragh. In the ruddy twilight, the dark city stretched endlessly, its spires and abysses teeming with millennia of accumulated evil. "We survive," she said simply. "That's all we can do. Survive and try to make the performances beautiful. If we're going to be damned anyway, we might as well be elegant about it." It was the most honest conversation I had ever had with another Drukhari. The summons came in my 5th decade with the cult. Lady Vyx'rathis requested my presence in her private chambers, a rare honor and a dangerous one. In Commorragh, privacy was where knives found backs. Her chambers occupied the highest level of the cult's spire, a space that defied conventional architecture. The walls flowed like frozen water, the ceiling disappeared into impossible distances, and the floor was transparent, revealing the vertical kilometers of the dark city below. She sat in a throne of woven bone and living metal, and her 4,000-year-old eyes regarded me with an expression I couldn't read. "You have performed well," she said without preamble. "Your skills have brought glory to the cult. Your name is known in the arenas. Several archons have expressed interest in claiming you for their personal retinues. You should be pleased." I waited. There was more coming. There was always more coming when dealing with beings who had survived 4 millennia of Commorragh politics. "But you are troubled," she continued. "I see it in your performances. The technical perfection is still there, but the enthusiasm has diminished. You kill efficiently but not joyfully. The crowd senses this. They prefer victims who revel in their role." She was right, though I hadn't realized she was watching that closely. After the Realspace raid, something in me had shifted. I continued performing, continued killing, but the savage joy I had felt that day had curdled into something closer to resignation. I was good at violence, I was even excellent at it, but I no longer derived pleasure from the act itself, only relief when the thirst temporarily receded. "I'm tired," I said. Perhaps the most honest words I'd ever spoken in Commorragh. Lady Vyx'rathis laughed. It was not a kind sound. "Of course you are tired. We are all tired. Do you think I enjoy this after 4,000 years? Do you imagine that the first time I opened a throat with my blades, I felt the same as I do now?" She rose from her throne, moving with fluid grace that belied her age. When she approached me, I could see the weight of millennia in her eyes, not wisdom exactly, but a kind of exhausted understanding. "I remember when I was young," she said quietly. "Before the fall, before She Who Thirsts was born from our ancestors' depravity. I remember a time when the Eldar Empire spanned the galaxy, when we created wonders instead of horrors. And then our people's pleasures twisted into something monstrous, and the Eye of Terror opened, and most of our race was consumed in an instant. I had heard the history, of course. Every Drukhari knew the story of the fall, how the Eldar's descent into excess had birthed Slaanesh, how she had consumed the Eldar gods and devoured trillions of souls in her first moments of existence. Those who survived fled to Commorragh, which existed in the webway, and was thus partially shielded from her hunger, but only partially. The thirst was her echo, her remnant claim on Eldar souls. "I was there," Lady Vyx'rathis continued. "I felt my gods die. I felt her birth. I watched billions of my people torn into the warp to be devoured forever. And in that moment, I understood. We had created our own damnation. Our pursuit of sensation, of pleasure without limit, of experience refined to its absolute extreme. It birthed a god who embodies everything we were and everything we feared. And now we are her prey, eternally hunted by the thing we made." She turned back to the transparent floor, looking down at the endless expanse of the dark city. "So we adapted. We learned to feed on lesser beings suffering, to harvest enough soul stuff to keep her at bay. We built Commorragh into this magnificent horror, a city that runs on cruelty because cruelty is the only currency that matters. And we perform. Every night, in thousands of arenas across the dark city, we perform. We kill and torture and orchestrate elaborate spectacles of suffering, all to buy ourselves a few more years, a few more decades, a few more centuries of existence. We are the most sophisticated culture in the galaxy, and we use that sophistication to inflict pain with unprecedented artistry." She looked at me then, and her expression was almost gentle. "You asked me once how long one can survive like this. The answer is indefinitely if you are skilled and lucky. I have survived 4,000 years. Some of the oldest archons have survived much longer. But survival is not the same as living. We exist in a state of eternal crisis, perpetually one failed performance away from annihilation, and eventually, perhaps in another 4,000 years, perhaps tomorrow, the thirst will overwhelm me. I will fall in some arena, or age will finally catch me, or a rival will find an opening. And when that happens, she will finally claim me. After 4 millennia of running, I will become her plaything for eternity. The weight of that statement settled over me like a shroud. 4,000 years of existence, and her final destination was already decided. She would be devoured. They would all be devoured. I would be devoured. There was no escape, no redemption, no possibility of a different ending. Why? I asked. Why continue? If the ending is inevitable, if we're all damned regardless, why perform? Why not just end it? Lady Vyx'rathis smiled her terrible smile. Because the alternative is worse. Because even a life of constant violence and horror is preferable to an eternity of being consumed. Because we are Drukhari, and we choose defiance over surrender. And because, and this is perhaps the most terrible truth, we still find moments of beauty in this horror. The perfect kill, the flawless performance, the drug-enhanced ecstasy of combat. These moments are real, and they matter, even if they can't change our ultimate fate. She returned to her throne, settling into it with the weariness of ages. You came to me troubled. I cannot untrouble you. I can only tell you what I learned millennia ago. Embrace what you are. You are a weapon, yes, you are a monster, certainly. But you are also an artist, and your art has meaning even if it serves damnation. The performances must continue. If they stop, everything stops, and so we dance, and we kill, and we feed the hunger, and we buy ourselves another day. That is all we can do. That is all we have ever been able to do. I left her chambers understanding more than I had when I entered. The Bleeding Serpent cult was not just an organization of gladiators. It was a tiny fragment of Drukhari culture collectively engaged in the same desperate project, delaying the inevitable through orchestrated violence. Every witch, every Kabbalite warrior, every Archon and succubus, we were all running the same race, buying the same temporary reprieves, dancing the same endless performance. And there was no finish line, only the dance itself. The promotion to Bloodbride came in my 7th decade. It should have been an honor. Bloodbrides were the elite of any witch cult, the most skilled and deadly warriors who served as bodyguards to succubi and led squads in the most dangerous raids. Only the best survived long enough to earn the title. The ceremony took place in the Crucibael before the largest crowd I had ever performed for. Thousands filled the viewing stands, an anti-gravitic craft, including Archons from 3 major cabals and succubi from rival cults. Lady Vyx'rathis presided, and when she placed the Bloodbride's token, a small platinum blade, in my hand, the crowd's approval was a physical force. To commemorate my elevation, she had prepared a special performance. 20 slaves from our most recent raid, humans, all of them former soldiers who had shown particular courage in resisting our reaving. They were armed with power weapons and light armor. I would face them alone. It should have been a massacre. By that point, I had killed thousands. My reflexes were honed to perfection. The combat drugs in my system made me faster than thought, stronger than human biology allowed. I could read their movements before they made them, see the tension in their muscles that telegraphed every strike. But as they emerged from their tunnels, as I looked at their faces, scarred, determined, hopeless, something in me hesitated. One of them was young, barely past adolescence by human standards. He held his power sword with the awkward grip of someone who had received minimal training. His hands shook. He knew he was going to die. They all knew. This wasn't a fight. It was an execution dressed up as spectacle. And for the first time in decades, I felt something that wasn't hunger or resignation or drug-fueled euphoria. I felt pity. The crowd was waiting. Lady Vyx'rathis was watching. My entire cult's reputation rested on this performance. And I stood there, blades in hand, looking at 20 condemned humans and feeling the stirrings of something I thought had been bred out of me in the vats. Compassion. I could make it quick, I thought. Clean kills, minimal suffering. It wouldn't provide the spectacle the crowd wanted, but it would be merciful, or as merciful as anything could be in Commorragh. And then I felt the thirst. It had been building over the past week, growing stronger with each day since my last arena performance. The gnawing emptiness had become a physical ache, a hunger so intense it made my hands tremble. I needed to feed. Not wanted, needed. The alternative was watching my soul slowly drain away until she finally claimed me. The choice crystallized with terrible clarity: show mercy and doom myself, or embrace what I was and survive. It wasn't really a choice at all. I moved. The young soldier died first, not quickly but efficiently, his power sword clattering from nerveless fingers as my shard net severed the tendons in his wrists. He had time to scream before my razor flails opened his throat. The crowd's hunger spiked, drawing sustenance from his terror and pain, and through their feeding I felt the thirst recede by the barest fraction. The others fought. They fought well, fought bravely, and it made no difference. I killed them one by one, each death calculated to maximize suffering and spectacle. By the time the last soldier fell, the arena floor was a canvas painted in crimson, and the crowd's ecstasy was overwhelming. They had gotten their show. I had gotten my sustenance. Everyone benefited, except the dead. Lady Vyx'rathis descended to the arena floor, her ancient eyes gleaming with approval. "Magnificent," she said. "This is what it means to be Bloodbride. Not just skill, but the willingness to do what survival demands, regardless of cost. You have proven yourself worthy." I wanted to tell her that I hadn't proven anything except my own damnation. That the moment I had chosen to inflict suffering rather than show mercy, I had crossed a line I could never uncross. That I had become the monster the vats had designed me to be. But I didn't say any of that. Instead, I bowed and accepted her praise and the crowd's approval. Because that's what Bloodbrides did. That's what survivors did. We accepted what we were and continued the performance. That night, in the privacy of my chambers, I looked at my reflection in the polished obsidian that served as a mirror. The Drukhari looking back was beautiful by our standards. Sharp features, predatory grace, eyes that held knowledge of 1,000 deaths. 7 decades of arena performances and Realspace raids had honed me into a perfect instrument of orchestrated violence. And somewhere in that span of time, I had stopped being the confused thing that emerged from the vat and become this, a Bloodbride of the Bleeding Serpent cult, feared and respected, technically proficient in the art of killing. I remembered the young soldier's face, the way his eyes had widened when he understood there would be no mercy, the sounds he had made as he died. And I remembered feeling nothing beyond tactical satisfaction at a kill performed well. That was when I knew. I had won. I had survived. I had earned my place in the cult's hierarchy, and I had lost everything that might have made survival worthwhile. I stand in the preparation chamber, surrounded by mirrors that reflect infinite versions of myself. The homunculus servant administers the combat drugs, and my enhanced metabolism processes them instantly. My heart rate quadruples. Time dilates, colors sharpen until the world becomes hyper-vivid. Tonight I will perform in the Crucibael again. My opponent is a veteran from the cult of the Red Grief, someone with 2 centuries of experience and 3,000 confirmed kills. The crowd is already gathering, their hunger a palpable pressure even from here. They expect a spectacle, they always expect a spectacle, and I will give it to them. Not because I want to. Not because I enjoy it anymore, if I ever truly did, but because the alternative is worse. Because the thirst gnaws and will continue gnawing until I die, and when that happens, she will finally claim the soul that she has been slowly consuming my entire existence. Lady Vyx'rathis was right. This is all we can do, dance and kill and feed the hunger and buy ourselves another day. There is no redemption for the Drukhari, no possibility of changing what we are or escaping what we've become. We are predators by necessity and monsters by design, and the only choice we have is between accepting our damnation and hastening it. So I choose survival. Every night, in every arena across Commorragh, millions of Drukhari make the same choice. We perform our elaborate spectacles of suffering. We inflict pain with unprecedented artistry. We harvest souls and feed on anguish and temporarily stave off the inevitable. It's not a life, not really, but it's existence, and in a universe where she who thirsts waits to devour us, existence is the only victory we can claim. Xelthara enters the preparation chamber, her scarred face showing the weight of the centuries she has survived. "They're calling for you," she says. "The crowd is eager. They've heard about your opponent's reputation. They expect something special." "They always expect something special," I reply. She nods, understanding the weariness in my voice. She has felt it herself, has survived long enough to know that the performances never truly end. That this is what it means to be Drukhari, eternal performers in a play that has no final act, only an infinite series of intermissions punctuated by violence. "Will you ever stop?" I ask. Xelthara considers the question, and when she answers, her voice carries the weight of hard-won wisdom. "When I stop, I die. When I die, she claims me. So no, I will never stop. I will perform until my skills fail or my luck runs out, and then I will become what I have always been destined to become. Another soul screaming in her eternal feast. But until that moment, I will dance, I will kill. I will buy myself another decade, another century, another millennium if I'm skilled enough. Because that's all we have. That's all we've ever had." She leaves me alone with my reflection and my blades. The crowd's hunger presses against the walls, eager to be fed. My opponent waits in her preparation chamber, making her own calculations, processing her own resignation. In a few minutes I will descend to the arena. I will perform with technical perfection. I will probably win. I usually do. The crowd will feed, and through their feeding I will earn another temporary respite from the thirst. And tomorrow, or next week, or next month, I will do it again. This is the entire torment of a Dark Eldar Witch. Not the violence we inflict, but the understanding that the violence will never end. That we are trapped in an eternal cycle of killing and feeding, buying temporary reprieves from a damnation that grows closer with each passing year. We are artists of suffering, weapons that happen to look like people, performers in a play that has no redemption arc. And the most terrible part? We choose this. Every night, in every arena, we choose survival over surrender. We choose to become monsters rather than martyrs. We choose the endless performance over the final curtain, because even a life of orchestrated horror is preferable to an eternity of being devoured. I pick up my blades. I check my shard net and razor flails one final time. The drugs sing through my blood, sharp and intoxicating. My reflection in the obsidian shows me what I have become, beautiful and terrible, deadly and damned. The tunnel to the arena beckons. The crowd waits. The performance must begin. So I dance. I kill. I feed the screaming darkness that is my city, my culture, my prison. And in those perfect moments when my blade finds that precise angle between ribs and lung, when the crowd's ecstasy washes over me like warm rain, when the thirst recedes by the barest fraction, in those moments, I almost forget that I am damned. Almost.